Hey guys, I thought just for some of you newcomers to the art of woodworking that we'd take a look at how to tune up your table saw. You know, table saw is probably the biggest workhorse in the shop. I know it is here. And keeping your table saw tuned up and everything in nice alignment, well, it sure makes them work a whole lot better. Now, before we get into this, one of the things you want to make sure you do is unplug the saw. That's a given. Because you might hit a button or something that you don't want to hit. What you're after, the way I usually do it, here's where I start. First thing I do is I start with my fence. And what I do is I come out here to my fence on my miter slide. And I simply make sure that it's perfect, right? I'm just lining the edge of my fence right up with the miter slide, right here. Locking everything down, and then I'm gonna check it up here. I'm good. I hadn't been long set this saw up. Then, now that I know that's correct, I usually go over here and check it to my other miter slide. They should be parallel. If they're not, you got a little cast issue, usually with the top. But this is the one you're going to use the most. So make sure you're straight right here. Then I'm going to go to the blade. Now the first thing I'm going to do with my blade is I'm going to make sure that it's perfectly 90 degrees vertical. Now, I'm going to tell you something. You don't have to have one of these triangles, but they're nice. A really good square works just as well. And I mean a good square. To have a good square, and here's another thing that always helps, is to have a really good fixed point of measurement. Don't trust a tape measure. I'll show you why in a minute. Now, when you're checking your blade for vertical, you need a good square and a square against the blade. Why is that? The reason is that if you happen to be holding this on an angle, it can give you a false reading. So you want to make sure that you're dead straight. We are. What do you do if it's not? Well, depending upon what type of saw you've got, every saw is going to have stops. And they're inside. And sometimes you kind of got to reach up. But another common cause is a lot of times something as simple as some sawdust getting built up on them. Because as this blade tilts and moves, it's hitting these bolts that are your stops. And the sawdust can get built up in there, or you might have to adjust it just a little bit to make sure the blade is perfectly vertical. If your saw is so equipped, is to make sure the fence is vertical. Now, same thing applies. Now, on this saw, we have an adjustment here and here. And by simply screwing it in or out, we can control the tilt on our fence. And again, same thing. I'll put this down so you can see. All right. Just simply make sure everything is perfectly vertical. If it's not, then you simply adjust your adjustment screws until it is. Not difficult. All right. Then comes one of the most important. And this is called run out. Being parallel. Now here's what you're going to do. You're going to select a tooth. See this tooth right here? This is the outer bevel. Or the outie tooth. It's closest to the fence. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm taking a good straight edge, and I'm going to set it up here. Now I'm going to move my fence just a little bit so I got an easy measurement. Got it. All right. Now the reason I like to fix measurement point like this is that I'm typically dealing in 32nds, 64ths, or millimeters and centimeters. And it's going to give me a super, super accurate measurement. And that's exactly what I'm after. Now I'm going to take the same tooth so that in case there's any deflection in the blade, it's not going to play an issue. And I'm going to come back here and I'm going to check my measurement here. And I'm good. All right, what if I wasn't? Well, we know now that the fence is parallel to our miter slide. So that means that inside the saw, the trunnion, that's the part everything runs on. It's usually bolted up to the top. It's a little bit out of kilter. Now, you can go in here and loosen your bolts and adjust. Every saw does it a little differently. Seems intimidating, but it's not, okay? Aggravating, yes, but easy to do. Now here's another tool that I like to have just for pure, you know, a good straight edge, a good trustworthy fixed point of measurement, a good triangle or a good square, and I want a good straight edge. And I want a good straight edge that the edges of it are crisp, sharp, and I can see easily, and I don't want glue on it. Here's another way to check it if you have a nice straight edge. Is simply bring your fence up and just let the same thing. Let the tooth touch. A little too tight there. All right, let the tooth touch. Take it to the back again. If we're not, again, if we're not parallel here, then when you're sawing, this blade instead of cutting correctly, the blade is cutting on it. The blade is trying to dig. And when it does that, it's trying to move your wood around. It's going to burn your wood. It's just it's unsafe. They just don't work. Okay. If you have to opt, now what am I talking about? Here's the thing. If you have to make a decision, if this fence isn't correct, then I can simply, on this particular saw, and they all have some type of an adjustment. Right here is is a set screw, and one on the other side. And I can adjust my fence to be parallel to my miter slide, and hopefully it will be parallel to my blade. If I have to make a decision to whether it's going to be square to my miter slide or to my saw blade, I'm certainly going to go for the saw blade because predominantly I'm going to be doing the ripping. We're square, we're parallel. We have one other check to make. Now this is why because we've got not only a vertical stop, but we've also got a 45-degree stop. And I forgot to mention something to you. When I get this set up on whatever it is I want to be, and again, I'm dialing in here tight. At that point, that's when I want to check if you've got the tape with the with your measurements here. This is where you want to set it right now to make sure this and this are exactly the same. Saves a lot of time measuring, but you want them accurate. Okay, the other thing I want to do is I want to check my 45-degree because we have stops. Now, whether you've got a left tilt or a right tilt, doesn't matter. There's a couple ways you can do this. The most accurate is with the triangle. If you don't have a triangle, you can simply take a good combination square, and if you got a chop saw, take your combination square, draw you a 45 on a piece of wood, and chop it. But you want to make sure it's 45 degrees. And then you can use that to double check your blade. If you have one of the triangles, Then, again, I've got my square in here so that I hold this triangle correctly. Now, I don't want to measure on the tooth. I want to measure just back of the tooth. I want to measure on the flat part of the blade. It's where you're always checking. And I'm dead on the money. If it's not, again, you've got a stop inside of there that needs adjusting. If you don't want to get down there and adjust it, then keep your triangle or keep your little piece of wood, and when you need to make a 45, use it to set the blade. The other thing you want to do is keep your saw clean. Now that's kind of hard to do. But, you know, a coat of wax on your fence, a coat of wax or some bow shield or something like that on the top, just to keep it operating smooth, it's pretty important. Keep your fence clean. You know, a clean saw and a well-tuned saw is a much safer saw. And not only that, they're a whole lot friendlier to use, and they're just nice. Always double check down inside your adjustments and your you know, grease and lubricate your trunnion, your gears, your workings. Make sure that you know your dust collection is clean. And one last thing is you want to make sure your throat plate's level. Now, throat plates typically, find one dead level is kind of hard to do. They always kind of, but what you want, the best case, you know, if it's nice and level, that's fine. But what you don't want is something sitting above the surface. And even though sometimes they'll rock and move a little bit, sometimes you can bend them, and usually you've got some Allen screws in here that will help you adjust it. But just make sure that when something is coming across this, that there's no interference. The last thing is that irrespective of what you do and how well you take care of it, scratches happen. And getting a scratch in the top of your table, well, like I said, it's going to happen. But if you get a scratch in it that's got a burr sticking up, and that happens, I know to take a little file and file that down and a piece of sandpaper and sand it smooth. I know you don't want to do that to your tabletop, but you already got a scratch. And if you don't get it out of there, then what's going to happen is every time you put a piece of wood across it, it's going to scratch it. That's how to tune up your table saw. Keep it clean, make sure everything's in alignment. All this saw can do is to perform as well as you set it up. Okay, now I've got my miter slide ready to do something else, but when you've got everything done, that's a good time to set your miter slide. Just keep it all straight, level, and square. Okay? All right, I'm Charles Neal, and we'll check you later.